There are secrets so fragile they hide behind closed chapel doors, whispered only in silent prayers, and buried deep inside the heart. This is the story of a young nun, bound by vows of devotion and silence, who carried within her a forbidden love she never dared to speak. Each stolen glance, each quiet moment, became a confession of feelings she could never utter out loud. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any of these emotional journeys that uncover hidden loves and untold truths. What she felt was more than temptation. It was a love that could shatter everything she had been taught to believe. And yet, holding it in almost broke her more than speaking it ever could. This is not just a story of faith, but of the heart's unshakable longing, and of a love that, though never revealed, still burned brighter than any candle lit in prayer. They told me that joining the convent would be like stepping into another rhythm of life, one built on bells, silence, and discipline. And in many ways, they were right. From the moment I arrived at St. Brigid's, an old stone convent perched above the Hudson River, everything felt hushed, preserved, as if time itself obeyed the vows taken here. The grounds carried the solemn stillness of devotion, yet my heart was far from silent. I was still a postulant then, carrying with me a suitcase that smelled faintly of soap and train stations, trying to learn how to surrender myself to obedience. They assigned me to the archives, rows of shelves stacked with weathered hymnals, yellowing programs, and fragile carbon copies of bulletins from decades past. My hands were careful, the sisters told me, and careful was what the archives needed. It was a safe place to bury both my diligence and my restlessness. That Thursday, the door creaked open while I was cataloging an old box of sheet music. She walked in with the sunlight behind her, carrying a cardboard box marked Bennett Family Sheet Music. She wasn't dressed like us. She wore a navy peacoat, her copper-brown hair catching the colored glow of St. Cecilia's stained glass window. When she placed the box on the table, she looked up and caught my stare. "I'm Julia," she said, her voice warm, steady. "My grandmothers sang in the parish here. We found these in her attic." I froze, fumbling for words that felt heavy on my tongue. "Sister Elena," I answered softly, though even the title felt too large for me. Her eyes lingered on me, curious but not prying, and something in my chest tightened as if a secret had just been uncovered without permission. We sorted the music together. Her hands bore faint ink stains, like she still wrote long letters by hand. She hummed unconsciously, a few notes slipping out whenever she unfolded a page. I tried to focus on the practical questions, dates, choirs, performances, but she answered each with little stories. Her grandmother sneaking out of algebra to rehearse in the church loft, the Easter service when the organ's middle C broke, the year the entire family attempted to sing harmony and collapsed into laughter. By mid-afternoon, I realized I'd memorized far too much. The scar on her chin, the way her smile began in her eyes, the way she brushed her hair behind her ear. I told myself it was harmless to notice. I told myself I was only being attentive. But my body betrayed me. My pulse raced in a way prayer had never managed to summon. The day changed abruptly when Sister Agnes entered, looking worried. "Father Matteo just called. A pipe burst in the parish hall basement. We need to get the boxes out before the water ruins everything. Elena, come with me." Without being asked, Julia followed. We hurried down the narrow corridor to the basement, where cold water had already risen over the floor. We formed a chain, Julia standing ankle-deep in the flood, me in the middle, Sister Agnes on the stairs. My arms burned as I passed box after box upward, my skirt heavy with dampness. Julia caught the heavier ones, her breath ragged but her expression steady. When a box split in my hands, pages spilling into the water, she lunged forward, catching the stack against her chest with a laugh. "They'll write psalms about this. Deliver us from the flood of hymnals." Even in that icy basement, I felt heat rush through me. That single line of humor was like a spark in the dark, and I knew something had shifted inside me. We worked until maintenance shut off the valve, then returned dripping and exhausted. Evening prayers followed, orderly as always, yet my voice shook on the antiphon. My mind repeated her words, her laugh, the glow of her hair beneath the glass. After Compline, I lingered in the foyer, locking cases. Julia stood near a photograph of the 1948 parish choir. "There she is," she said, pointing at a young face. "My grandmother. She used to say this convent saved her life after the war." She didn't explain how, and I didn't ask, though my curiosity gnawed at me. The dusk outside pressed against the glass, and in the reflection I saw the two of us almost shoulder to shoulder. A thought intruded, sharp and impossible. "I want to know the things you hide in your quiet." It startled me so much I stepped back. "Thank you for helping today," I managed. "You didn't have to." Her smile softened. "I wanted to." She hesitated, then asked, "Do you miss music? I mean doing it, not just archiving the remnants." The question hit me like an arrow. "Every day," I admitted. "We're starting a community choir downtown. No additions, no rules. You should come." She said it casually, but the weight of it made my breath catch. "I can't," I answered quickly, though what I meant was I want to. She nodded as if she understood, her expression kind. "Sometimes it's enough just to know you were invited." She reached for her coat. "I'll be back next Thursday with more boxes." I should have left it at that. But later that night, tucked inside one of the hymnals, I found a scrap of staff paper. Scrawled across the clef was her phone number, no message, just digits and a small drawn rest like a private joke. I stood there too long, the paper burning in my palm. I told myself I would return it next week. I told myself it was caution, not longing. But as the convent bell tolled for prayer, I slipped it into my sleeve, right against my skin. When I closed my eyes, I saw her standing in that flood, laughing with a stack of music pressed to her chest. And I knew, deep down, that the vows I came here to learn might not be the only ones I would have to choose between. The following week felt unusually heavy. Each day was measured by the toll of the bell, the rhythm of prayer, the sweep of silence across the cloisters. Yet beneath all of it, something quickened inside me, like a secret pulse. It wasn't just the memory of Julia's laugh in that flooded basement, or the paper with her phone number still folded in the drawer of my desk. It was the awareness that Thursday was approaching, and with it, her promise to return. I tried to distract myself with duty. The archives needed labeling. The novices were assigned to polish brass candle holders. Sister Agnes drilled us on the Psalms for Sunday. But even as I repeated the Latin verses, my eyes traced the shadows of the chapel windows, imagining the sun glinting against Julia's hair. Thursday came cloaked in rain. The stone steps outside glistened, water running like tiny rivers through the cracks. I told myself she might not come, that the weather or life, or God himself would intervene. But by late morning, the door creaked open and there she was, shaking drops from her peacoat. "You're drenched," I said, startled by the softness in my own tone. She laughed, brushing rain from her forehead. "New York in October. The sky doesn't ask for permission." She carried another box, though lighter this time. Sheet music again, but also photographs, sepia portraits of choirs, clippings from parish bulletins. She set them on the table, her hands lingering as if reluctant to let go. As we sorted through the contents, the silence between us felt charged. Every brush of her hand near mine sent a tremor through me. She caught me staring once, and instead of looking away, she held my gaze. Something unspoken hung there, delicate and dangerous. "You ever feel like you're living two lives?" she asked suddenly, her voice low. I froze. "What do you mean?" She unfolded a program from 1962, smoothing the creases. "Like the one everyone sees and the one that's actually yours. Sometimes they're not the same. Sometimes they can't be." I swallowed hard. The room smelled faintly of damp paper and candle wax. "Yes," I said at last, the words slipping out like a confession. She nodded as though she'd been waiting for that answer. Then, softer, "I thought so." Before I could ask more, the bell clanged from the chapel, sharp as thunder. I startled, nearly dropping the stack of photographs. Julia reached forward instinctively, steadying them with her hand over mine. The contact lasted only seconds, but it was enough to send heat rushing to my face. The afternoon blurred with small moments, her stories of family dinners, her laughter when I tried to imitate a Bronx accent, the way she tilted her head as if listening for something in the silence. All the while, my chest tightened with the knowledge that what I felt was not allowed, not spoken, not prayed for. Later, when I walked her to the foyer, she paused beneath the portrait of Saint Cecilia. Rain streaked the tall window beside us, blurring the river outside. "You didn't call," she said lightly, almost teasing, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of hope. I froze. "I couldn't." She tilted her head. "Because you didn't want to, or because you weren't allowed?" The question pierced me. My vow of obedience was still unformed, not yet permanent, but even the rules of postulancy were clear: no outside entanglements, no private communications that might distract from devotion. Yet standing before her, I could not muster the strength to lie. "Because I wanted to too much," I admitted, my voice barely steady. For a moment, her lips parted as though she might say something, but then the convent door opened and two sisters entered, their chatter filling the space. Julia gave me a final look, quiet but intense, before pulling on her coat. "I'll be back next week," she said simply. And then she was gone, swallowed by the rain. That night, during evening prayers, I couldn't keep my focus. The chapel glowed with candlelight, the voices of the sisters rising in unison. But my mind replayed her words, her eyes, her hand over mine. When the final amen echoed, I felt both uplifted and guilty, torn between devotion and desire. In the stillness of my room, I unfolded the paper with her number again. My hands trembled. I stared at the digits until they blurred, then tucked it back into the drawer. It was both salvation and temptation, an anchor and a storm. The days that followed felt different. Every prayer was heavier, every silence louder. I found myself searching for her reflection in the glass of the foyer, imagining her laughter echoing down the hall. I began to wonder if God himself was testing me, not with punishment, but with possibility. One evening, Sister Agnes stopped me in the corridor. "You seem distracted," she said gently. Her eyes were kind but sharp, as though she could see through the walls I tried to build. "I'm fine," I replied too quickly. Her hand rested briefly on my arm. "Remember, the heart can be louder than the bell. Don't let it drown out what you came here to find." That night, I lay awake long after the convent had gone silent. Her words rattled inside me, but Julia's presence lingered stronger. The heart can be louder than the bell. Mine thundered like a drum. By the time Thursday approached again, I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. She would return, and with her, the question I could no longer escape: which life was truly mine, the one shaped by vows and obedience, or the one unfolding in the fire of an impossible love? As I stood by the window, watching the leaves scatter across the dark lawn, I realized that the choice would come sooner than I was ready for. And the sound of her laugh in my memory told me it was already too late to turn back. The morning Julia returned for the third time. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of the chapel, painting the floor with shards of gold and crimson. For once, the rain had lifted, and the convent seemed almost too bright, as if it were daring me to hide what I felt. She arrived carrying nothing, no boxes, no papers, just herself, her smile easy but her eyes searching. I noticed it instantly. She wasn't here for the archives today. She was here for me. "I thought you might like some company," she said, her voice warm, casual, but laced with something else. I tried to keep my composure, though my pulse raced. "I suppose I could use it. The archives aren't as endless as they seem." We walked together into the library, the one place in the convent that felt hidden, tucked away from the routines of the sisters. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of old leather and dust. She trailed her fingers along the spines of books, pausing here and there, but I felt her attention never really left me. "You always look so serious," she said lightly, glancing over her shoulder. "Do you ever laugh?" I smiled despite myself. "I try. It's not usually encouraged here." Her laugh bubbled up, unrestrained. "That's a shame. Laughter's a kind of prayer too, don't you think?" Her words hit deeper than I expected. It was as if she was reminding me that holiness wasn't only found in silence, but in joy. I wanted to believe her. We spent hours talking, though I couldn't tell you what about. It wasn't the words that mattered, but the way she listened, the way her eyes held mine a little too long, the way her presence seemed to crack open the walls I'd built. Every time her hand brushed mine, whether reaching for a book or passing a pen, the air between us charged with something electric. At one point, she leaned closer, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Do you ever regret being here?" My throat tightened. "Every choice has weight," I managed. "But sometimes I wonder if I chose out of fear instead of faith." Her gaze softened. "And now?" I hesitated, caught in the intensity of her question. For a moment, I wanted to tell her everything. The restless nights, the way her laughter echoed in my prayers, the battle between devotion and desire. But before I could speak, the heavy door of the library creaked open. Sister Agnes stepped in, her eyes sharp as she surveyed the room. My heart lurched, and I instinctively stepped back from Julia. "Are you well, Sister Claire?" Agnes asked, her tone calm but weighted. "Yes," I said quickly, too quickly. "Just organizing the music archives with Julia's help." Agnes' eyes flicked to Julia, then back to me. She nodded slowly but didn't smile. "Remember your place," she said softly, almost kindly, before leaving. The door closed, but the warning lingered in the air. My chest tightened with guilt and fear. Julia broke the silence, her voice quieter now. "She doesn't like me." "It's not you," I said, though my voice shook. "It's everything." For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in her expression. She turned away, tracing the edge of a book with her finger. Maybe I shouldn't come anymore. Panic surged through me. The thought of her absence left a hollow ache. "Don't say that," I blurted, my voice sharper than I intended. Her eyes snapped back to mine, and for a moment, the room felt suspended in time. "Then what do you want me to say?" she asked, her voice trembling, not with anger but with something rawer, more vulnerable. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The truth pressed against my chest, begging to be released, but fear chained it down. I wanted to tell her I wanted her to stay, that her presence had become my solace, my undoing, my salvation all at once. But I couldn't. Instead, I said softly, "I don't know." Her shoulders slumped, and she nodded, as if that answer was enough, even if it wasn't. She gathered her coat, her movements slow, almost reluctant. "Maybe you'll figure it out," she said quietly before slipping out the door. I sat there long after she'd gone, the silence crushing me. The books around me seemed heavier, the air thicker. I pressed my palms together, but no prayer came. Only her face, her voice, her question. That night, the convent felt colder. I lay awake in my narrow bed, listening to the creaks of the old building, the rustle of wind against the shutters. I thought of Julia's eyes when she asked what I wanted her to say. I thought of Sister Agnes' warning. And I thought of the choice that loomed before me, one I had never imagined I'd face, to remain in the safety of vows I wasn't sure I believed in anymore, or to risk everything for a love that might never survive outside the shadows. As dawn broke, light filtering pale and thin through the curtains, I realized the truth. The decision would no longer wait. Sooner or later, I would have to answer her, not with silence, not with excuses, but with honesty. And when I finally did, it would change everything. The following week, the convent was buzzing with unusual tension. A local bishop was scheduled to visit, and with him came a sense of scrutiny that made every sister nervous. Rules were stricter, voices hushed, and eyes sharper. For me, the weight was doubled, because Julia had sent me a note. It was tucked discreetly into one of the hymn books I often used. In her neat handwriting, she had written, "Meet me in the old garden behind the chapel at dusk. We need to talk." Those words echoed in my mind all day as I scrubbed pews, prepared linens, and recited prayers I barely heard myself speaking. What did she mean by "we need to talk"? Was it a goodbye? A confession? Or something even more dangerous? When dusk fell, I slipped quietly toward the garden, heart pounding in my chest. The old iron gate creaked as I pushed it open, the smell of damp earth and blooming roses filling the air. Julia was already there, leaning against the stone wall, her arms crossed tightly as if holding herself together. "You came," she said, relief flickering in her voice. Of course, I replied, though my voice shook. She took a step closer, her expression torn between resolve and fear. Claire, I can't keep doing this. Every time I leave, I feel like I'm leaving a part of myself behind. And every time I come back, I see the way they look at us. I saw the sister the other day. Agnes, is it? She's watching you. Watching me. It's not safe. Her words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I lowered my gaze, feeling both shame and longing. I know, I whispered. But what else can we do? If anyone knew. She interrupted, her voice rising. If anyone knew, then at least it would be real. I'm tired of secrets, of pretending that what's happening between us is just books and conversations. It's not, Claire. You know it's not. Her boldness shook me. For a moment, anger flared, not at her, but at the truth I couldn't deny. Do you think I don't know what's at stake? If they find out, Julia, they could send me away. Strip me of everything. And you, what would they do to you? Her eyes softened, but her tone remained firm. I'm not afraid of them. I'm afraid of losing you. The silence between us was heavy, filled only by the distant toll of the evening bells. For the first time, I reached out and touched her hand. Her fingers trembled, but she didn't pull away. The warmth of her skin against mine felt like stepping into fire, and I didn't want to leave. But before I could say anything more, a sharp voice cut through the garden. What are you doing here? Sister Agnes stood at the gate, her face shadowed but her posture rigid. My stomach dropped. Julia immediately let go of my hand, but the damage was already done. Agnes had seen. I forced a calm I didn't feel. We were just talking. Agnes' eyes narrowed. Talking at dusk in secret? She stepped closer, her gaze piercing. Sister Claire, you are treading on dangerous ground. And you, her eyes snapped to Julia, have no place within these walls if your presence leads others astray. Julia squared her shoulders, defiant. With all due respect, sister, I came here for work. Whatever else you think you saw, that's your interpretation. But Agnes wasn't convinced. I will be reporting this, she said coldly. The bishop will want to know why a young nun spends her evenings in secret gardens with outsiders. The moment she turned and walked away, I felt the air leave my lungs. My knees nearly buckled, but Julia caught me, her grip steady. She's going to tell them, I said, panic clawing at my chest. Let her, Julia replied, her jaw tight. If this ends us, at least we'll know it wasn't because we were cowards. Her words were brave, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Fear not of the convent, but of losing what we hadn't even had the chance to begin. We stayed there for a few minutes, both of us silent, the weight of Agnes' threat pressing down. Finally, Julia cupped my face in her hands, her touch firm yet tender. Claire, we don't have time anymore. You need to decide. Do you stay in this life because it's safe, or do you take the risk of stepping into something real with me? I wanted to answer, but my throat closed up. The truth was, I didn't know. My whole life had been built on obedience, on following the path laid before me. But for the first time, that path felt like a cage, and the thought of Julia walking away felt unbearable. As the bells tolled again in the distance, Julia let her hands drop, her eyes shimmering with unspoken pain. I'll be here tomorrow night, she said softly. At the garden. If you don't come, I'll know your choice. She walked away before I could respond, her silhouette fading into the shadows. I stood frozen, torn between duty and desire, between vows made to God and the whisper of love that promised freedom. That night, sleep didn't come. Agnes' words haunted me. Julia's ultimatum echoed louder. And in the quiet of my cell, I asked myself the question I had been avoiding for weeks. What do I truly believe in? The answer, I realized, would shatter one world and create another. The next day felt like walking on a tightrope over fire. Everywhere I turned, I could feel eyes lingering too long, whispers trailing behind me in the hallways. Sister Agnes hadn't wasted time. Her disapproval had already spread like smoke. And with the bishop's visit just hours away, I knew the timing couldn't be worse. I tried to immerse myself in duties, folding altar cloths, polishing candlesticks, reciting prayers. but none of it silenced the storm inside me. Julia's ultimatum weighed on my heart like a stone. Meet me in the garden tonight, or it's over. Every tick of the chapel clock pulled me closer to the moment of decision. I wondered, if I chose her, would she truly stay? Or would my world collapse with nothing left to hold? That afternoon, during preparations for Vespers, the bishop himself arrived. Tall, stern, draped in crimson robes, he walked through the convent halls like a shadow of authority. His voice carried weight, his gaze measured, and though he spoke kindly enough to the sisters, I felt an unspoken pressure to appear beyond reproach. During his inspection of the library, he paused near me. "Sister Claire, yes?" he asked, his tone neutral. "Yes, Your Excellency," I replied, my head bowed. "I've heard you are diligent with the archives," he said, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "But I also hear there have been distractions." My stomach clenched. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Sister Agnes standing just behind him, her hands folded, her expression unreadable. I began, but he lifted a hand. "Be mindful, sister," he said, his voice calm but edged. "Discipline is a gift. Do not squander it." He moved on, but my body remained frozen, shame searing through me. Agnes' glance lingered, and I knew this wasn't just suspicion. It was a warning. That evening, I slipped into chapel, desperate for solace. Candles flickered at the altar, casting shadows that seemed to mock my prayers. I knelt, clasping my hands so tightly my knuckles ached. "God," I whispered, my voice cracking, "if love is yours, why does it feel like sin? If Julia is a test, why does she feel like truth?" Tears blurred my vision, but no answer came, only silence, heavy and suffocating. When the final bell tolled that night, I walked toward the garden. My steps were slow, hesitant, but unstoppable. Each one carried me closer to the brink of the life I knew and the life I feared. Julia was there, waiting beneath the old oak tree, her figure outlined by the faint glow of moonlight. She turned as I approached, her face pale but resolute. "You came," she said softly. Relief flickered in her voice, though her hands trembled. "I had to," I replied, my heart thundering. For a long moment, we stood in silence. Then she stepped closer, her eyes glistening. "Claire, I don't know what will happen tomorrow or what your sisters will say. But I need you to hear this now. I love you. I've tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself it was just admiration or friendship. But it isn't. It's more. It's everything." Her words cracked something open inside me. All the walls I'd built, all the vows I clung to, seemed to crumble in that instant. My chest ached with both terror and wonder. "Julia," I whispered, tears spilling freely. "Do you know what this could cost me?" She nodded, her own tears shining. "I do. But do you know what it will cost you if you walk away from this? From me?" Her question echoed louder than any sermon I'd ever heard. I thought of nights alone in prayer, of the silence that hollowed me, of the weight of a life that never truly felt like mine. And then I thought of Julia, the way her laughter lit even the darkest corners, the way her presence made me feel alive, not condemned. Before I could speak, the sound of footsteps snapped through the stillness. Julia stiffened and my blood turned cold. From the shadows emerged Sister Agnes, her eyes blazing, her voice low but furious. I knew it. Julia instinctively stepped in front of me, as if shielding me. "Leave her out of this," she said firmly. But Agnes ignored her, her gaze fixed on me. "Sister Claire, you've disgraced your vows. The bishop will hear of this. And when he does, you'll have no place here." Her words cut like a knife, but something inside me shifted. For the first time, instead of shrinking under the weight of authority, I felt a spark of defiance. "I haven't disgraced anything," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "I've only admitted the truth, that my heart belongs where it feels alive." Agnes' face hardened. "Then you've chosen your path." She turned and disappeared into the night, her footsteps sharp against the stone. Julia's hand found mine, her grip tight. "Claire, what do we do now?" I looked at her, fear and love colliding in my chest. Tomorrow, everything would change. The bishop would know, The convent would judge, and my future would no longer belong to them. It would belong to me, to the choice I had finally made. I pulled her closer, my voice trembling. We face it. Together,